about all the upside potential of these engineered indexes. I think it's important that we get inside the moving pieces of all this and get beyond the fluff of the illustrations. IULs are the most misrepresented product in financial history. Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180, and today we are talking about the 7 dangers of engineered indexes inside of Universal Life, Index Universal Life. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is because I got a lot of people that are talking and selling and marketing about all the upside potential of these engineered indexes, typically sold with no caps. Some of them are using cap rates, and some of them are using no cap rates with high participation rates and all these different things that are going on. But like anything else, I think it's important that we get inside the moving pieces of all this and get beyond the fluff of the illustration. So what I wanted to do is just, I sat down, kind of jotted some things down, some notes down going through as I'm writing my book, IUL Exposed, and kind of coming to the conclusion of writing it. It's actually with the editor right now, and we are going to be finalizing and publishing this thing very, very soon. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, that way you're notified, because when the book comes out, I'm going to be doing a blast on marketing here to get this book into as many hands as possible, because I think it's one of the most important books probably in the last couple of years when it comes to the cash value life insurance market, because of the fact that IULs are the most misrepresented product in financial history. And so that said, let's just get right into what I would call the 7 dangers of engineered indexes inside of IUL. And so for this, I'm just going to go to the board. We're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to share this on here. And I'm going to try to not spend a whole lot of time on this, because let's face it, this is not overly complicated. So the first one is complexity and transparency. Okay. Now, typically, IULs use multiple asset classes. When we're talking about these engineered indexes, when you see here, I wrote, they typically use multiple asset classes and sophisticated algorithms to control volatility. Now, these volatility controlled indexes are all the rage across all these engineered indexes. And while they're not necessarily to control volatility, they're using sophisticated algorithms. And when you utilize these algorithms, what happens is there's no transparency behind these algorithms. And so I'm just a believer you shouldn't invest in anything you don't understand, that you don't know. And so with that said, because of the lack of transparency and because of how complex these are, and I'm going to dive into more as we go through these, you're going to see I don't think you should be putting your money inside of an Index Universal Life at all, but especially if you are going to do it. My warning to people is saying, if you're going to do it, do not use engineered indexes. They are dangerous, and this video is proving why. Performance uncertainty. So here's the thing. When we look at engineered indexes, typically the way these things are created is with a look back, right? So a lot of times these indexes are 7, 8 years old, maybe 9 years old, 10 years old, something like that on the oldest side of it. But they do like a 30-year look back or a 20-year look back. And what they do is they look back in time and they create the index with complete transparency and ability to kind of cherry pick what's going on. Now, what happens is if the future market conditions differ from the past, this could be really bad for market performance, for the index performance, which would lead to lower cash value, which would lead to a higher risk of the policy lapsing and imploding, especially when it gets to the years when you are starting to leverage the policy for tax-free income in retirement. And for the record, that's what I'm talking about. When I'm saying these things are misrepresented, I'm saying they're misrepresented in the context of them being sold as this amazing tax-free retirement income vehicle. That's the problem. So the fact that it's a proprietary in nature product. Now, here's the thing. These life insurance companies, they started doing these engineered indexes because of the fact that they created their own problem. I'm going to actually go off to the side here real quick, and I'm going to write this out. So back in 2011, there were 14 companies selling IUL. Right now in 2024, there are 70 plus companies selling IUL. Now, if you understand what happens here, what happens is when you put your money into an IUL, that money goes into the general fund of the life insurance company, okay? That money then creates an options budget, and that budget goes and buys options. So when we have, and you understand options are a supply and demand product, and you look at all the companies back then, they were doing 3 indexes. They were doing S&P, they were doing the Dow, and they were doing the Russell 2000. Okay? These were the 3 indexes that everybody was using back then. What happened is, as the companies started to scale and you had more companies selling IULs, what had to happen is the options cost, because it's supply and demand for the cost of options. Well, the supply was pretty fixed. We had more people coming in, so the demand went up, and so therefore the cost went through the roof. And so one of the reasons that people don't realize or want to acknowledge that engineered indexes became so popular is because of the fact that they were just trying to control that options cost. Because if they could create a relationship with a third party, right here, a third party, but that relationship was exclusive to the insurance company, they could control those options. But at the end of the day, when we look at that proprietary nature, there's always going to be extra costs. There's always going to be extra fees, and when it is what it is. Now, here's the other reason I don't like, I guess what I would call a danger, is the fact that you have changing index components. That would be number 4, the changing index components of an IUL. And I just changed a page somehow, so I got to go back. Oh, there we go. So there we go. These changing index components inside of an IUL is a real deal. So not only can the components of an index change, like the rules, the levers that they can pull, but they can even eliminate the index. Maybe you bought an IUL because you were really attracted to the engineered index that you bought. Well, you may not know this or not, but like 6, 7, 8 years from now, that index that you bought it for could be completely cut out altogether. It might not even be an option to participate in inside of the policy anymore. So the fact that this comes down to another lack of transparency. Now, if you look at it, it'll tell you in the illustration that can happen. But the fact is they kind of sweep this information under the rug like, it's no big deal. And I promise you, this stuff does happen. I've seen it happen with nationwide products. I've seen it happen all over the board. So number 5, fee structures and costs. Now, typically these engineered indexes, they don't come for nothing, right? So there are additional fees and costs that are not in traditional indexes. One of the ways that they do it, when we talked about the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, and the Russell 2000, those are what would be considered traditional indexes. So these engineered indexes typically have additional management fees, additional performance fees, or additional costs associated with the underlying asset, depending on what those assets are. Now, a lot of this time, there are fees for these algorithms that we're talking about, right? This is what is going on in the back end of the management of these indexes and the options. So at the end of the day, the same thing goes with this. This all leads to an erosion of illustrated value, this value that your agent is trying to convince you that is a conservative illustration outlook of the future. This goes to show you that it simply is not. Now, market disruption and liquidity risks. This may be a little confusing because they say your policy is liquid. Well, during market stress, a lot of these engineered indexes may actually underperform, right? And they may not be as liquid as some of these other types of assets. They may have to hold them, and this is what happened a lot of times with these companies that had these volatility controlled indexes that got absolutely massacred right after COVID. It's really, really kind of disgusting how that all played out. But the deal is, these algorithms that are used to control volatility inside of these indexes, these volatility controlled indexes, these algorithms that they use might actually struggle to adapt in extreme market conditions. When we're starting to talk about different market environments, different market conditions, that once again, doing the look back, if the future of the stock market performance doesn't mirror and look like what the recent market performance and behavior has been like, well then you potentially have injected risk into the policy, into the way the index is performing, which would lead to, therefore, again, lower cash value, higher chance of lapse, more risk when you're taking loans out, all these different things. Now, finally, the last one is the illustration risk. They're overly optimistic. They are assuming favorable conditions. If you look at the current assumptions, they're always assuming the favorable current conditions. Let's face it, they're making these policies in an environment that is a favorable environment. If they didn't make them right now in an environment that they would sell in, then they wouldn't be able to sell them. So they're making them in these favorable market conditions, and they're using these current assumptions, and they're projecting these current assumptions to never change moving into the future. The thing that makes me really scratch my head, I should say, is the fact that you got a lot of people out there that love these things, that will tell you these are the solution to a lot of your 401k issues, your government tax issues, inflation issues, all this stuff. And the reality is they have all these problems with the government. They have all these problems with unfunded liabilities and government debt and inflation and all this stuff. And so they want you to get your money out of the government, and they want you to put your money into these things. But the bottom line is, when you put your money in this, you're just shifting one risk for another, and you're shifting into a market where, into a product that doesn't really have any proof of how it's going to perform in these market changes, in these market shifts, right? So at the end of the day, if any of these things happen, if you have the market doesn't perform as we think it's going to do with these assumptions as far as the returns that we're going to get, if the conditions don't remain favorable, or if the high crediting rates don't keep coming in, well, if any of these things happens or doesn't pan out, it's likely to lead, once again, to a lower performance in the policy, lower cash value, and therefore a higher chance of lapse, which is obviously not what you're buying these for. You're buying a cash value life insurance policy. To me, the reason you're buying a cash value life insurance policy is because of the fact that you're looking for a foundational asset in your life. A lot of people buy these thinking that it's going to be the one-size-fits-all solution to a lot of your problems, a lot of your challenges, it's going to be helping you achieve your goals and objectives. And so people put a lot of money into these, not knowing not knowing anything about really how the underlying assets work, not understanding how the underlying indexes work, not understanding the variables and the shifts that can happen inside of these policies. And so it's important to really, really understand this stuff deep down, inside out. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book, IUL Exposed. It's with the publisher now. We are getting this thing out there. I want to get this book out as soon as possible. I'm pushing inside of the next 30 days is when I'm trying to push to have it released, because I'm not doing this big Amazon bestseller push or anything of that nature. That's not what this is about to me. It's about getting it out there to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. That to me is everything, because I know the impact that this can have in saving hundreds of thousands of people from making the mistake of putting their money into this asset that they don't understand. Can save a lot of agents from doing what I did, where I sold IUL for 4.5 years before I realized what I realized about it. So I want to save you. I'm basically doing this for myself back in 2010, 11, 12, 13. This is the information that I wish I had had access to make an educated decision before going out and selling this product. So anyway, hopefully that helps. Hopefully it adds some value into understanding how this works. If you have any questions or comments about how any of these engineered indexes work beyond this, by no means was this meant to be like a super deep dive. If you have more questions and you want to go deeper on that, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. That way you're notified when I launch new videos, because the videos I'm going to be talking about the launch of the new book, and when that new book comes out, you can read it. It'll give you all the information about this stuff on a much deeper dive that you need to see. So until then, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon. See ya.